of empath narcissist trauma. Today we want to talk about what happens actually when we leave this abusive or narcissistic relationship of whichever kind. So there's many different kinds of relationships, and we want to look into how the hoovering, the trying to suck you back into this parasitic type of relationship, how this works, and how to deal with this as an ex-partner, and also especially when we can't really fully leave the narcissist, say when we are co-parent with the narcissist. So a heartfelt welcome to all of you guys. It's so good to see you. As always, we have open mic. People are still logging on. And today, I would love to have a little more interaction. I would love for you to share a little more and have a bit more of a discussion. Okay, there are, of course, educational aspects, but these, I try to single them out, like the video that I published today about gaslighting and mind control techniques, which are absolutely 100% present in narcissistic relationships. So I would love for you guys to do your homework there a little bit, because it's difficult to cover this complex subject here with everybody and all the different aspects. So this is basically our 7 or 8 now of this workshop series. And I would like to get started with asking you what you have learned so far. Those of you listening to the recording or coming to the workshops, watching the concepts for empath videos and the energy updates, would you like to share what you have learned so far as a direct result of this sacred self-healing work here?
Hello, everyone. It's Gosha.
Hi, Gosha.
Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. I love being energetically sensitive and wonderfully feel the energies, but it's so tough sometimes. Once you fight somehow those very, very heavy energies and in a cluster of very difficult situation, be it with being a victim of something or of a situation or a job situation plus a partner, you can kind of feel like you bruised up all over.
Are you saying that you have identified that you have basically work and personal relationships that are narcissistic in nature? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I feel like I'm in a very toxic environment, very toxic, and reclaiming my space to just take necessary steps to move forward. And I'm actually looking forward to it, really. Do you have any specific questions? Because
no, I was just interested in sort of what these light bulbs are that came on. I mean, I hear from what you're saying, Gosha, that the biggest light bulb is basically the realization that you're in a toxic environment, as you said. So circumstances, like where we go, so that there is some kind of...
Well, the light bulb would be definitely if you don't want to do something, but you do it anyway, and then you feel like you have nothing to say. You feel gaslighted all over, like you just, especially when doing taxes.
So what you're saying is that it leaves you in sort of a weird place of not really knowing what to do.
Yes.
So you bit by bit,
bit
You
by
kind of
bit.
claim more space, but you still feel entrapped in some sort of some sorts.
Yes, yes.
For those of you who have been in a situation like this or still are, can you guys give me a hand sign if you can relate to what Gosha just shared? This sort of entrapment feeling that you see it, you realize it, you intellectually understand it all, but you're still in it, and even as you're maybe reacting to things or doing things, you're like, gosh, right?
It seems like no
And you
way
don't know what
out,
to say.
like a jail or maze of no way out of the situation.
Yeah, okay. So this is like half the people here paying attention and giving hand signs, guys. Thank you, everybody, for raising your hand. This is one of the main characteristica when we are in toxic relationships, because nobody likes pain. Nobody likes, things that are unjust, unfair, and hurting. Okay, but there's got to be something there that makes us stay. Now, I've already mentioned that, of course, when we have high levels of enmeshment, say we are married and we have a business together and we have children together, it's not that easy to leave, right? I mean, there's a lot of aftermath to this, right? And so uh, we do make our choices. And these choices, these are the ones that I would like to look into today and perhaps help you guys to develop at least a strategy, okay? A strategy. Not necessarily a plan yet, but a strategy on how you can liberate yourself, depending on the level of enmeshment. Who of you, let me ask you, guys, who of you had ever had like a work relationship, with a boss, with a coworker that was highly narcissistic, where you felt like, okay, there's like big hands coming up. Okay, yeah, okay, okay. All right, this is interesting, guys, because I wanted to cover this here. What this propensity is, all right, that signals, that telegraphs to other people that we are receptible, that we are sort of willing, right? Because if that is identified, it seems like this pattern replicates through all areas of our lives, not just in work. Yes. Or not just once, Brian. Yeah, dozens of times. Yes. And there are some things here in our society. I've tried to cover this with the latest energy update and energy tips. And that is that the way our society is structured right now is that we can get, or a person who's narcissistic can get pretty far here. All right. And there are some professions that are where we have like an 80-20 ratio. We have 80% narcissists and 20% non-narcissists. Okay. Some of these professions are politicians, neurosurgeons, priests, um, publicists, and of course celebrities, actors, and so forth. Those are all um, professions that promise basically the highest level of payback, okay, the highest level of glamour, the highest level of power, the highest level of sort of reverence from other people. And we have to understand that, okay, that the reason why we meet those kind of people in certain situations and certain work situations and certain social environments is because they are favored right now. Favored. There is another area, and I don't know the statistics there. I guess there aren't any, where I see a lot of narcissists, like exponentially higher levels of narcissists than in other areas, and that is actually in the New Age scene. Okay, there is a lot of groups and a lot of gurus, a lot of people who are 100% qualify for narcissistic personality disorder. And sort of the worst or the most malignant kind of that is what we can see in in the jails and in court system and so forth, where they then, eventually get caught, for all the secondary type of abuse that takes place. But what we need to understand is that it's very, very easy in this relationship, in this society, to make our way with conning. And the best conners are the narcissists, because they have all traits and all abilities that are needed, including lack of empathy, including energetic sensitivity, and including the ability to pull people in, and to completely mesmerize them. Okay, so there's a talent there, and this talent gets paid off in our relationship. Society. Okay. So, anybody else? What have you learned so far through all these workshops that we've been doing, the videos, the energy updates? For the last 2 months, really, I've been focusing on getting as much info out on trauma healing and narcissistic abuse and so forth. What have you learned so far?
Hi, it's Amanda.
Hey, Amanda.
I've learned a lot, more than I could say briefly here, but one thing is breaking down my conditioning from the very beginning that made me so susceptible to this that I had been blind to it. You know something's wrong inside, but you also feel like it's normal, like it's supposed to be that way because that's all you've known. So just really getting down to the conditioning from a young age, and then conditioning through, even more conditioning through each relationship. It's like builds upon builds upon builds, to the point where there were things that were so wrong that I couldn't even see it. I could feel it, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't know what it was.
And there was also like a sort of like a cloud all around it, because you'd think that other people would tell us, right?
Yeah.
If they see it. But they couldn't see it either. Why? Because we've, over the years, protected it or justified it or found excuses, right? We enabled it somehow. And to some degree, we've become complicit too. So there's also guilt, right? This is not just about...
Well, the guilt was the fuel that kept it going, I think, because from there was shame that it was going. And then once you feel ashamed, then you protect the lie even more.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes absolute sense. And the shaming, where did you experience the shaming from?
I experienced the shaming came from myself, but the shaming came from feeling like if I exposed the truth that I had been hiding for so long, that just I would kind of I wouldn't be believed, for one, is what I thought, which was true, which just came to be. But also then you have no, you talked about this in the update. At that point, then there's no support system left.
So you feel singled out too?
Yes. Because throughout the time going on, you've been kind of strategically removed from anything that could help you, or any support system. Not only have you kind of been taken from it, but then you've kind of shamed yourself out of it as well.
Yeah, because you've been, hiding it or justifying it, or often also enabling it, even if it's just through silence. That's a part of the pathology, as I called it in the energy update. You know, that's part of our trauma. And it's really, really important to understand that was strategically implemented into us. That's really, really important. Everything that you just shared and everything that Gosha shared are things that are being strategically implemented into us. It's part of the, as you call it, conditioning. It's also a grooming process. And I love that you've pointed out that it's every single relationship. It's not just one. You know, it's somehow it starts with our families, and then it's with our friends, and then it's our work relationships, and then our boyfriends, girlfriends, maybe the first experiences, and that's how we then end up in you know, these more tight knit, you know, marriages or groups and so forth. Yes, it's strategically implanted, and you have to understand, Amanda, and everybody listening here, that this is the trauma itself. Okay, so it's part of the delusion as well. You know, the delusion is that, well, only you, that you are alone. Okay, this is part of the delusion. It's not a voluntary delusion. It's part of that grooming. Okay, which includes, you know, separating you from your support system and so forth. Flying monkeys, you know, like over the years, you know, carefully orchestrated memes, you know, that make the people around us wary of us. All right, those are all things that belong to this gaslighting. And if you haven't watched it yet, please watch the video on gaslighting. It's in detail, you know, how that happens. But yes, we're already at the place now that we want to look at how can we you know, break free and then live with this, you know, how to treat ex-partners, and you know, if we are co-parents with them, what to expect, what to do, and so forth. You guys are commenting a lot. Thank you, guys. Yes, Janet is commenting. Real estate agents, I agree. That's another profession where you find a lot of narcissists. Janet, do you have another question? I will put this here aside just for a sec after I read the other ones. Yes, Julianne learned to identify that it's because of the programming, yeah, the conditioning, and how this is being triggered, the false belief. Yes, the whole gaslighting cluster. Yes, Becky's saying the same. Yes, there's a good question here. All right. Okay, so there's two questions, and we will answer them in the course of this webinar. Question number one: how to allow all this to just clear? This isn't possible, Janet. It can't just clear. It isn't just something that was done to you. It is something that has altered you. Okay, and so the process of recovering and healing and then ultimately thriving has to be a voluntary process. This is why I often compare the recovery process with the recovery process from an addictive substance. Okay. Substance abuse also alters you. Okay. And there is a wonderful opportunity to go deeper, to self-discover, to self-heal, to move into a whole different consciousness level through the trauma. Okay. But it is something that we have to willingly and voluntarily enter. There is no way to just make it go away. This is often something that is part of our family karma. This comes from way, you know, from generations back. And it's one of the strongest, if not the strongest, family karma or karmic family pattern that inherits almost one-to-one to our children. So this needs to be addressed. This is one of those kind of experiences, or say karmic setups, where there is absolutely no mistaken. This is not something you can meditate away or have somebody take away, heal away. This is something that requires you, not just you personally, each and every one of us here, to step up. This is your prompting from your true self to step up for yourself, to move into that highest or best version of yourself that you can be. And the reason why you are here right now and why you are beginning to see all this is because you can hear that prompting. This is your start button, okay, for your liberated self to finally feel whole again. And I can tell you, all of you guys, that this is a big part of our collective healing process here. So this is a collective problem that we as nations, especially the first world nations, will have to go through here in these next 10 years. It's collective healing of narcissism. I hope this answers. Oh, okay. You didn't mean it in that way. Okay, sorry. Okay, so you didn't mean the question in that way. And yet, though, this is a question I get quite frequently. How can you make this go away? Okay, so I hope you guys got something out of the question. Okay. How do we escape this? If I just do more or do better, then things will change. Well, there's a short answer to that, and there's a long answer to that. Do you want to hear the short answer first, Julianne? The short answer is this: everything I ever talk about. The Sacred Self-Healing course, the energy updates, the energy tips. Every single workshop I do is about that. I'm giving you a recipe. I'm giving you a strategy how to do this. Every single publication I do is all about escaping that. Connecting with your true self, heart clearing, shadow work, inner child work, codependency healing, grace mental heart fusion, you name it.
Energetic protection, absorption.
Exactly. I mean, all 48 different healing modalities that I have are just about that. Plus, the Sacred Self-Healing course. It's all about how to escape that. And what is that? Illusion. Our inability to discern truth. Our inability to know what is conducive for us and what isn't. And of course, to learn how to make better choices. Some of us are okay. 85% of people out there are okay with their misery. Never forget that. Yes, and that's a question you get from your clients. Of course, when your clients ask you that, this is then the longer answer, is to find the answers in their heart, in their, through basically the higher vibratory version of themselves that's already in them. So, meditation, mindfulness, self-care, self-love. I mean, self-care, self-love is usually my answer. Okay, but we'll go through this here in a little more detail. Thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so here's what in these last 4 workshops what we discussed: 5 types of narcissism, how to identify it, how to identify the traits and the behaviors. Okay, how these mind games look like. Okay, in particular, and of course how the overall strategy, the gaslighting and the mind control, how that looks like. Okay, this is a very, very detailed, and with the recording you have the overview. Go back to the previous recordings where we talk about this. And today we want to talk about these psychological aspects that we just discussed of realizing the abuse, the energetic aspects of leaving, and the whole aftermath stuff. Okay, I want to spend a little more on hoovering and then rebuilding and thriving. So as you have so wonderfully demonstrated, the first thing is always, and it's actually kind of the hardest part, is facing the delusion. Okay, all these painful realizations. Yeah. Now, these painful realizations, they have been going on for a long time, but we may have not uh, contextualized it in that way that, well, that's never going to change, right? We have this irrational hope that, like you said, by trying harder, doing more, trying to be better, pleasing more, or whatever, that this will change. And that is one of these main delusions that we have that are being used against us. This is how we telegraph to a narcissist that we are good bait, that we are fantastic narcissistic supply. Why do we do that? Because we believe in the good in people. And as empaths, unfortunately, we can also see it and feel it. It's deep down there, we can see it. So we believe in it. Just like how we want others to believe in our light. But you have to understand that this is what's being used against us. And I go into that selection process here in a second, how narcissists pick you. But as for the realizations, the inner dialogue kind of goes like this. Oh my God, I mean, this is more, those are my words, right? I mean, you may say it in different words, but oh my God, this was just a fantasy bond, or this is just a fantasy bond. Meaning that it's not really about the people involved, it's about the rituals, or it's about the status quo, or the security, or the props, or whatever. External stuff. It's not really about the bond between two people. I was an object. It was never love. He never loved me. It was never about me. And then, of course, the big one, how could I have been so stupid? These are the things that we have to contend with, because no matter which part of the process that we are at, we have to face those statements. And sometimes we are afraid of those statements or those realizations, which is why we avoid or hide, and therefore never really make the choice to leave, or drag it out forever. Okay. The point of the matter is, though, that there's always two that belong to this kind of parasitic relationship. Okay. And so if you want to really be smart and prevent this from happening again, you take these questions and really work with them. And it doesn't matter, maybe it takes you a year to get through one of these statements. What is a fantasy bond? Here. Those are all signs that you're in a fantasy bond. You don't have to read this right now, but we've already gone through this. I was an object. Yes, you are an object. You are narcissistic supply. There is absolutely nothing subject about this. Yes, and it does make you cry, because this is really, really difficult to understand. But it's my job here, and please don't take this as harsh. And lately I've been getting complaints that I'm talking about these things too openly. Well, sorry. I mean, I can't, I'm putting trigger warnings now and everything. But yes, these things have to trigger all these hidden pains in us. Otherwise, we do not have a teeny bit of chance to break free from that. You can do energy work as much as you want to. You can go to the best healers in the world, or do whatever modality, run from one psychic to the next, or it's not going to work until you face those statements. No. when you have identified that you are basically narcissist father, okay, which often, comes sort of with the secondary realization, namely that you have codependent tendencies, okay, then you need to work with these things. What in the world could your ego possibly get out of staying in such relations? Because that is your blind spot, and that is what's being used against you. And the hardest part for us is that we cannot imagine that somebody has no empathy. The other day I compared this with, me living in Florida now. I cannot imagine anymore what it was like to run around in my snow boots all day, which was only 9 months ago. But I can't imagine it right now because, I've been running around in shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops all day for 9 months. Okay, we cannot imagine what that's like. Even, if we had that ability to have no empathy, but we don't. That is not something we can turn off. And if we try to turn this off, which some of us do, then, it drives us into physical, emotional, mental illness, because we can't turn things off within ourselves without fragmenting ourselves. And then, of course, comes the whole domino effect of these fragmentations, which is even more energetic absorption, even more, falsehoods, even more insecurity, even more need for external security, and so forth. All right. But you have to understand that it isn't that you have been so stupid, it is that you were set up for that. And in some of your cases, it's easy to identify. If you go back to your parents, you'll find that there's somewhere like a narcissistic parent or grandparent. And I'm not talking in the sense of a narcissistic personality disorder, sort of clinically diagnosed. But, the same counts for any kind of other mental illness, borderline, other personality disorders, and substance abuse. So even if you didn't have a narcissistic parent, if you had an alcoholic father or mother, which I had, it shows the same symptomology as a narcissist, because the addiction itself makes the person be narcissistic. Now, there is a problem with mental illness and substance abuse, namely that these people are not automatically also narcissists in the sense of complete absence of empathy. They have empathy, but they're unable to resolve it. Okay, and so they turn to narcissistic behaviors to compensate for it. So they need somebody else to create a sense of self, to create security, and to literally be able to make it, with all the illusion going on that they're entitled to, that they're the best ever, that nobody can reach them, and that other people are really just sort of what you call that in the movie industry, not the supporting actors, but the people that are just in the background, the objects. Okay, yes, we are objects, even if it's people who have empathy. When they treat us narcissistically, then we become objects. Extras. Thank you, Brian. Exactly. We are extras. And if we have been identified as bait, as narcissistic supply for a narcissist, then the narcissist shows interest in us in that courting phase in the beginning. Not in the very beginning. This is actually sort of the secondary phase, to groom us, to make sure to nurture us, to make sure that, kind of like Hansel and Gretel, give us the food, so that we last, that we can be good supply. Okay. how do we telegraph that we are susceptible? Yeah, this plays directly into our codependency, guys. This is some of it has to do with us, being raised and conditioned with niceness. Remember, I talked about this before, the difference between kindness and niceness. So niceness is an externalized version of that, which disregards our own inner feeling. We just, we're told to say thank you and to be nice to other people. We're literally conditioned to disregard our own boundaries, especially women are. So there are some things that we bring in just due to our cultural conditioning that set us up for that. But why is it us and not the neighbor? That's because we have something that the narcissist does not have, something that the narcissist reveres, that he thinks could add to his collection of abilities. And so in a nutshell, the narcissistic relationship and the abuse then is a transference of pathology and a transference of sense of self. So the narcissist basically energetically takes on our identity and our sense of self, because there is none. He doesn't have one. He's like deeply empty, deeply insecure, and needs this supply from somewhere else. He takes it on like a coat. He puts it on like a costume. Okay. And in return, he transfers, or she, his or her pathology over to us. So on a long enough timeline, the way this looks like is that the narcissist keeps feeling better and better about himself, gets stronger and stronger, starts having affairs, starts lying, cheating, the whole 9 yards. And we get physically sick, we get emotionally, mentally very debilitated, and we start acting out like the narcissist. Okay, so this is not just some magical thing, guys. This is psychological transference, and energetically, that's exactly what happens. Okay, so it's a form of hijacking. Does it help to see ourselves as a victim? Absolutely not. Okay, so the victimhood plays a role in this, because without the victimhood, it actually doesn't work. Okay, so the victim attitude that we bring in sometimes, into our life attitude, that life is just happening to us and that we're just trying to survive it. The lower vibratory alignment that we have is the fundament for this. Okay, without that, it wouldn't work. But then also comes our trauma, our shadow, our stuff, okay, our blind spots. Besides, our susceptibility, our values, wanting to be nice and kind and so forth. But we also have shadow traits, and we also have darkness in the places where we are separated. And this is what the narcissist is specialized on. Specialized. There's no better way to say it than that. So that's all he does in that courting phase, where he love bombs you, and where she, sort of produces sort of heaven on earth. Okay, that's the phase where she collects all the data that is then later being used against you. And I'm not going to go into this here again. There is some videos here already, a few hours where we talk about this. So acknowledging the damage, and we got quite a bit of energetic and psychosomatic damage here that we have to acknowledge. And this is not just some, sort of hurt pride. This is some severe damage, really. This is acknowledged as PTSD. And you're going to have to understand that this is where my attitude as a healer comes from, where I say, okay, you can't just make this go away, regardless of, I understand, Janet, that you didn't ask that, but I get that question quite a bit. How can I make this go away? No, only these are things that happen within yourself, or that happened within yourself, and that have now created an energetic residue. They have now become energetic attachments. Okay, those are the ones that we see when we work with you in transmissions. Okay, and they need to be worked through. realistically, not to sound negative or pessimistic, it's not pessimistic to say that, but the fastest I guess this can go is within 2-3 years. But on average, this healing process, not just from a particular relationship or marriage, but the whole cluster of abuse and the codependency underneath it, and the lack of sense of self, and the guilt and the shame, realistically takes about 6 to 7 years to fully heal. Okay, but in that process, and this is the main message here, in that process, the person, like yourselves, and this is why I call it self-healing, because that's realistically all that is. Okay, but in that process, the person undergoes the biggest self-transformation that he or she has ever undergone, namely self-discovery, consciousness development. The healing of the trauma is just a tiny little part. Often that is just sort of the ticket. It's just the motivation to do this. Now, what you see here on the screen, the energetic effects, that's we've gone through this already, but I know this is kind of Chinese for most of you. Let's look at this a little more practical here. Okay, these are sort of how emotional energies, how specific repressed and traumatized parts of us, how they play into our chakras. So the different colors here, this is first, second, third, fourth, fifth chakra, okay, in our torso. Okay, legs, hips and legs, feet, often karmic inner child stuff, and obviously third eye, which is then here the indigo blue, which opens up the vision and opens up our connection to truth, and then the crown chakra, which opens up our cosmic connection, our divine connection, divine consciousness. All right, but let's just look at how this materializes in our body. Okay, so we use this chart here to identify when we have energetic sensations during sessions, but also recurring or chronic problems, muscle tensions, pains, even injuries. I've shared this before. We can have scars even, on specific spots, and it actually indicates energetic damage there. Okay, but we can also go a step farther even and look at what these things that we have been swallowing, that we have been enduring, what they do to our system, to our organs, to our entire sort of metabolism, guys. And it's you've got to really feel into this. Okay, this is no child's play. A typical chronic diseases as a result of narcissistic or toxic abuse are pretty much the entire cluster of mystery diseases, such as fibromyalgia, IBS, Crohn's. What else do we have? Lyme disease, asthma. I mean, those are not all mystery diseases, but those are sort of autoimmune dysfunctions, arthritis. Those are very, very typical issues that develop within a person over time when trauma does not get healed. Okay. Do you guys have any questions so far or comments? Okay, then let's move into the leaving process. Okay, so last time we talked a little bit about this. There's a fears of leaving that we have to face. Some of that has to do with, of course, the anger and the violence, perhaps even the damage that, occurs through leaving, the fears of losing an ideal, like will I ever be able to love again? Will I ever be able to find somebody? Or when it's work related, will I ever be able to find a good job like that again? Okay, those things are quite, those thoughts are quite strong, when it comes to really engaging, in developing an exit strategy. Fear of being alone in relationships. When it's our parents or siblings that we've identified as the narcissists, it's a bit more complicated because obviously you can't really leave your parents, but you can. I guess you can. You could just cut them out of your life, but that doesn't really help you to heal. It also doesn't really help you to resolve the karmic family aspect. Okay, if you want to resolve that, energy work is fantastic for this because you can't really expect reconciliation with your parents. That's unrealistic, but you can do quite a bit of etheric reconciliation. One of the biggest problems, though, is and why these parasitic or toxic relationships often take so long and drag out forever is the back and forth. Okay, and this withdrawal, this going back. Okay, there are like intense, very intense ties. Even if you intellectually understand all of this, even if you even get it, even if you see all the gaslighting, like one of you said this earlier, there can be very, very strong energetic ties, guys. This is how Jeff and I started actually doing energy work for others, as a service, because when people have these kind of ties with other people or groups or entities, if you will, it's very difficult to know how to approach this. So you need someone who can read energies, who can see them. But these ties can, of course, also be financial. It's very common when parents are involved that they use quite a bit of carrot dangling, that they use, inheritance stuff, that they pit you against your siblings and so forth. And obviously the siblings are part of that as well. We did a workshop about this. And last but not least, when you have kids with a narcissist, which is very unfortunate, but part of the healing process, because you also have to accept that this karmic tie to your narcissistic ex has now duplicated with your children. And for many of you, if self-love and self-care is not motivation enough, your kids can and should be. Okay, do it for your kids. You can come to self-care and self-love once you've left, but the really the biggest hurdle is to leave. Okay, and facing this guilt and shame. Amanda, are you there? I would love to hear some of your story, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Not the whole 9 yards, but like this moment of breaking free, like what goes through the person and what happens afterwards.
I don't know specifically what you're asking for, but all of those that list that you had was all there, all the reasons to not go, but ultimately it was my kids, and I was dying. I had reached a point where I knew if I stayed, I wouldn't live even probably another few months. Okay. And it wasn't just I had reached that point of illness where my organs were shutting down. I didn't have any life in my body. I was at the end. And of course, no doctors could tell me what was wrong, but I knew what was wrong. So I wanted a life for my kids, and I wanted my kids to have a mother. And I had help. There was a place in my town that to this day I don't know where I found the courage. I don't have very much memory of like really choosing to go, but I went. And there are people there that could help you. They helped me with just the logistics of how to do this.
Before you left, or like
No, during, like in the moment, because you can't, I mean, the situation was a scary situation. So it wasn't like I was going to be able to walk out the door with my kids. So they helped me with a strategy, as in, okay, it's going to take a few weeks, and here's how you're going to do. And they had they told me exactly how he would act during this time and how I could respond to try to keep everything status quo for a while until I had like an escape plan.
So you were still with him at home, but
yes.
you were now at least mentally developing a strategy.
Yes.
And that kind of strengthened you a little bit.
Yes, I think because the decision, once I walked in that door to get help, the decision was made. Okay. I knew I had made the decision, and that changed everything. I was scared. I was really, really scared, but the decision had been made. And I think once that happened, that tipped everything. And I was working with people who understood. I wasn't having to explain myself. They were telling me what gaslighting was. They were telling me, they were validating my experience without me having to explain it.
What kind of a place was this, or is this something that people can find in their town?
Yes, this place, it was called the Family Justice Center. And they work with various situations, but special victims is kind of their main thing. And
so like a social workers, but also probably legal advisors there.
Yes, it's kind of like a one-stop place. They had almost everything there and didn't cost anything.
So it's not a shelter. I mean, shelters are also available, of course.
Well, they help you find that place. So they would say, okay, based on this, once you leave, here's where you can go for a little while, initially, if you're afraid for your safety. So they help you with that.
This is for the case of, I mean, if you don't mind me saying this, but you had a very typical case of physical violence, battered woman type of situation. So this wasn't just you being afraid of your husband being a little mad at you. You feared for your life. Okay, so when it can go that far, okay.
Yes. And I will say that it only had gotten to that far in just the last few years. So I had known that there was other kinds of, narcissistic things happening. The other kind of damage and grooming was many, many years before it reached the physical part. So it didn't get to a physical, violent manifestation until like the last few years that I was there.
Just real quick, Amanda, because you have 4 kids. And you're a single mom now. You're divorced. You're still alive.
Yes.
Your oldest just graduated, right?
Yes.
And so there's an afterlife, guys. Just kind of weighing everything here.
Yes.
Did the age of your children play a role?
Yes, absolutely. I have 3 sons and a daughter. And at this point, my oldest son, he was just coming to the age where he would be entering high school. Like, in the States, it's like 8th grade. And then, there's a 7-year difference. Well, more like 6.5, 7-year difference between the youngest and the oldest. So having a son entering this different stage of life for the first time, and then, having my daughter, she was young enough to where I realized that violence was all she knew, and it was possible she thought that was normal.
Was that something that went through your head? Like, like the kind of role model?
Yeah.
For your daughter that you were setting there?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very similar for me. Thank you, Amanda. I didn't want to put you on the spot. I just wanted to, to make an example other than myself, that there's a life afterwards.
Yes.
It's not without impotences, and it's not without challenges. So we're going to get to this here in a second, but it still is possible. Okay, so no matter how, and everybody's thanking you, by the way. Lots of hearts here for you, Amanda.
Thank you.
That, and no matter how desperate our situation looks like, it is that moment. And I love how you said that, Amanda. I don't even know how you found that place and how you went there, and how you got the courage. But there is this moment when, when you go into autopilot, and it's your true self really guiding you, and you do something that you've never thought you could do.
I never thought I could do it. And even now looking back, I don't know how I did it.
Yep. I can subscribe to that. There is something that clicks, and in your case, that's why I like your example, because it went so far, like so far, I mean, it was like literally life or death. Okay. And that is something that maybe those of you listening here take as an example and motivation to not wait that long. Amanda, no offense, but it's
No.
like, with 4 kids, obviously the enmeshment and all that is severe. But
Well, I also, when I went to the Family Justice Center, I talked with somebody who kind of showed me the scale of where I was at, and she was the first person. She looked me in the face and said, "Make no mistake, your next step is death. This is your choice."
Yeah.
And that was very blunt.
This is kind of like where I take the courage and also this sort of sternness from, to speak these things the way they are. There is no sugarcoating when it comes to being in a toxic relationship, even if it's a work relationship. Like many of you, I've had a series of work relationships like that, including sexual abuse, including court, and so forth. There's many variations of the same theme. Okay, but it won't stop until we break that wheel, until we break the cycle. And sometimes it's just a moment where we have the courage to do something that we never thought we could, and then there will be people there. There'll be people there. Okay. So number one is reaching out, because the energetics of the state. So obviously, like Amanda said, the further progressed it is, the lower your energy goes. But the energetics of this state, this abused state, this traumatized state, is that you do not have enough energy yourself. Your conscious level is not high enough. Don't mistake conscious level with awareness level. You can have all the awareness about it, but you don't have enough energy to pull yourself out of there. You need the energy of somebody else. Okay? That's typically also how you got there in the first place. When your energy is too low, that you can carry yourself, you become susceptible to others, to toxic things from others, to drainage, because you externalize your power. That is not to be mistaken here with reaching out. If you reach out, to people who are just there, they don't expect anything back. This is just what they do. Okay, then they can temporarily bump your energy up to a place where you become able to break the wheel. And then as a consequence of you having that courage, your energy will rise, and then you will begin to be able to carry yourself through the process. It's just that springboard that is needed. Okay. Thank you, Amanda. So let's look at the aftermath here. What comes up. Amanda mentioned this already. The first thing, of course, is the practical stuff, and that when we are in a relationship, let's focus here a little bit on marriages or romantic relationships. There's typically a home involved somehow. The question: do I leave? Do I kick her or him out? Somebody's losing his or her home. If there's kids involved, obviously even more so. So we have to deal with the physicality of it. Okay, to have a strategy to make that physical shift. Okay. Then, of course, comes the confrontation itself, which is, informing the other of our decision. When there's, when it's like in a stage where it's more or less a legal matter, obviously, we would go seek legal support. But when it's as far progressed as in Amanda's case, it's really the first steps are about physical safety. Okay. And then the legal stuff all comes afterwards. That is a process in most countries. This whole process takes anywhere from 3 months to 3 years. Okay, so there's nothing really that you can do other than waiting till you get sort of the notifications from court and so forth and so forth. So you don't need to think about that when it's about this first step, this breaking up step. It's more about the focus that you need to change. Okay, the focus needs to be you, your physical safety, your emotional safety. That's why I keep talking about self-care, self-love. Okay, because those can carry you there. You have to really make yourself priority. Period. When kids are involved, obviously your kids as well. And the attitude shift here also needs to imply that we shift from a victim into a survivor. That can this place that Amanda described for us. You have to switch to survivor. You cannot do this as a victim. Okay. Many of us sort of get a little wobbly there, and start talking to others, and then others tell us about their stories and sympathize, but also sort of drag us into the molasses of victimhood again, which then lowers our energy again. You get to really understand that the energetics of victimhood is apathetic. Okay, which means you don't have enough energy to pull yourself out. So you really, really got to shift your focus into survival. Survivor. I want to survive this. Okay. Whatever is going on, whatever degree, whatever degree of toxicity, I'm stopping this right now because it's destroying me in whatever way, emotionally, financially, mentally, physically, spiritually. Doesn't matter. It's destroying me and my kids.
Jona, when I first moved out, it's Justine speaking, and that's what, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's a bit. I was driving in the car, and sure enough, on the radio was that song, I Will Survive. And
Cool.
I was like, oh, thank you. Like there was some energy someplace that put a smile on my face, because it was one of the scariest things, one of them that I'd ever done in my life. And then that night, I don't know, there was some energy that was just, I was by myself in this place I was renting. And again, this was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that in my life. So, I knew something was about to change. And I have no regrets today. But it is a very courageous.
Yeah.
I'm saying it to the person, not back then, not so much now, because I feel like I am more myself than I was then. But there was that little bit of humor when that song came on. I'm like, thank goodness. So, but it for all the people that, and it's still not done yet, because it cycles into all the other people. It's like, oh God, when's it going to end? But it's bit by bit. It really is. And I really thank you for all your help.
You're welcome. I love the example that you gave with the song and the radio. This is one of those mystical things that a lot of people report, that once they make that choice, once they shift the focus within, right, that support shows up. Okay. It's almost like as if for as long as we have been supporting or enabling the delusion, that we're unable to see the support. So this is the truth behind it, is that the support's always there, okay? But we're unable to see it. We're unable to perceive it. And it is that moment when we realize that what it is that we have done so far is destructive in what shape or form, okay? And that we no longer want this. That all kinds of different support systems show up. This is really, really important for you guys to internalize, because when we're still in that wobble phase, where we go back and forth and where we have a hard time facing all these fears, the support isn't there yet. I mean, it is, but we can't see it. It's the moment we make that decision, guys. And that's one of the as part of the pathology, part of the trauma is that we have been singled out, is that we feel alone. And that's the one thing that we need to overcome, is to realize that we're not alone, and that there's tons of people out there that not only have gone through this themselves, who know people who've gone through this, who know where to go, who know who can help, etc., etc. And the music, the radio station will help. And, people like myself, you come across a random workshop recording on your phone or whatever, you go on YouTube, and this is the kind of stuff, guys, where the universe then begins to conspire to support you, because you are in your truth. When I talk about self-propelled, that's what I'm talking about. It's nothing you have to do. It's just something that begins to occur out of itself due to the energetic shift that you've done, due to you literally shifting into this higher vibe. That's all it takes. So when people ask me, what does it take to overcome or to get out? I mean, I could ask you guys now, what is it that can get you out? It's seeing that you have a choice. Exactly. Yeah. And then making it, having the courage to make it. And you don't need to know how all this is going to play out, because you won't know how it's going to play out, but it will play out. Okay? It will play out. You just need to choose that. Problem in the sort of long-term aftermath, where you know, we go into this sort of dualistic, this ego place again with our experiences, is that we get pulled back into it energetically. Okay, so this shift that I've talked about here from victim into survivor, and then from survivor to thriver, is something that needs to happen long term. It's like an addiction, guys. So if you don't, you know, keep going, all right, then you get pulled back in. And that is where many people, you know, keep sort of, you know, even within their relationships, going back and forth. And here is where some of the narcissist techniques come in that make this particularly hard. And I want to just go through the discard rules. We talked about them in number 4, you know, like how to do this. This is your strategy. And there is absolutely, guys, no exception. Those are discard rules. So in narc language, discard is, you know, how to get yourselves out of that toxic relationship. Okay, there is no exception to this rule, and we talked about the most typical discarding mistakes that people make, and they're all in that list. Okay, you pick. But let's look a bit more specifically here into how the narcissist reacts. So examples like Amanda's story, they are actually quite typical. I mean, for someone like myself who does this professionally, so just so you guys know, this is my daily life, okay, to help people out of these kind of situations, not just with the narcissists, also with other kind of issues and mental illness or addiction is involved. But this is the level on which I operate here as energy healer, and there can be multiple aspects, you know, that we haven't covered here, be involved, you know, such as etheric stuff and so forth. But all the fancy stuff, the fancy energetic stuff, guys, is all just a mind distraction, because it comes down, when it comes down to you liberating yourself, it comes down to your choice. Okay, and that is a very practical thing. That is not some, you know, conspiracy theory or evil forces are fighting for the soul. Of course, those things in the larger context do take place, but for the most part, it comes down to you and your present moment awareness and your ability to be in your heart. Okay. Now, from the narcissist's point of view, though, if you want to leave, this is, you know, something. There's 2 ways they react to this, and then there's a third way that I didn't cover last time. So one way is that they immediately cut you off and pretend you haven't even existed. They meet the love of their life the next day, probably already had that in preparation when they sort of feel that you're developing an exit strategy. That's usually what the narcissist does, immediately shifts to grooming new narcissistic supply, and then cuts you off like you don't exist. From the narcissist point of view, you do not exist. If you are not narcissistic supply, you are not existent. You have been an object, yes. Okay, there is not a single moment where you have not been an object. Okay, so that's why we used this narc language to really describe this, because from a narcissistic point of view, this has nothing to do with what you consider love or empathy or even vulnerability. Okay, now the other type is the type that begins to beg, that begins to you know, start you know, pushing in, you know, coming up with all kinds of excuses, perhaps even, and this is very tricky, because don't forget the narcissist is also an energetically sensitive person, not an empath, but energetically sensitive. And so they're often, very good at emulating human emotions, and they will go into this apologetic kind of place where it's very convincing, where they say they're sorry and this isn't going to happen again, and something along those lines, only to 5 minutes later tell you what a terrible person you are and that it's all your fault, to go back into how wonderful it was back in the old days, and how they want this back, and how they, it just keeps going back and forth. It's like a complete push and pull. There is another kind of reaction that you can get when you start, say, planning on leaving, and that is something that has to do with fully understanding how the narcissist psychology works. And that is, there are some narcissists that have a little more sort of masochistic type of personality, and what they do is they will set themselves up for that. They will go into suicidal thoughts. They will go into a deep depression, and they will literally create the point of no return. Why do I say that this is important to understand in regards to the narcissist psychology? It is because the narcissist has this grandiose and sort of all-encompassing, omnipotent type of thinking. And so when the narcissist notices that you are sort of on your way out, and it's undeniable that he's, forgive me my English, fucked up, all right, then he decides that the relationship is going to end through his sort of self-destruct. He's basically wallowing in his own shame, and self-destroying. It can go all the way to suicide, but unlikely, but sometimes it does. And literally believing that he or she is now the one that is in control through, and this is pathological, thinking that through their own self-destruct, they are in control. Okay. Yes. And then, of course, we have the whole cluster of abuse, verbal, physical, or psychological harassment. Becky, thanks for asking. Harassing you after you've left, if this is a narcissistic tendency, like they do something in retaliation. Now, this is something that you can find in psychology. There is, of course, moments where a person can lash out, vent, and not be in full control due to the pain that they're going through, and do something like lashing out, like retaliation or so. That would be just a sort of more part of the normal ego reaction. But someone who continues doing this is typically someone who can be regarded as a narcissist, or someone with other personality disorders. So where they don't let go, where they keep coming back even after years, where they just pretend nothing has happened. That is sort of the most common form that you guys will encounter. Okay, so yes, the verbal abuse, the physical, and the psychological harassment, that all serves, the narcissist to justify. Okay, so because there will never be accountability. The narcissist will never admit any kind of responsibility. It will always be your fault. So this has to be fed. This has to be maintained. And so harassment and all that is just part of the MO. In my experience, the harassment that you see when you discard was already there beforehand. Yes, that was already there. But it can be normal for people, not normal, but that's normal ego behavior, to lash out right in the heat of the moment, or the height of the drama. But narcissists continue doing that, yes, and they keep coming back. And that is showing you something here, okay? So here are some of the most common hoovering techniques. The one I already mentioned, pretend the relationship isn't over, and they just keep making plans. They just ignore the breakup. They just like, you know, give it a week or so, and then they come back and then, you know, give you concert tickets or send you flowers or, you know, talk to you like as if nothing had happened. Then, you know, another one is, of course, pretending that they're really concerned about you. So where they keep sort of trying to get to you by pretending, you know, to be empathetic and to pretending to having compassion for you, the very thing that you have never gotten from them in the whole entire relationship. So that kind of hoovers you in, right? Because now you're like, oh my God, he really cares, or she really wants to know how I'm doing, you know. And so part of your psychology then is to get seduced back into talking or, you know, contacting the narcissist, because now you are getting pimped again. You're getting, you know, this the carrot that has been dangled in front of your eyes for years, but that you could never reach, is now given to you. Okay, so this is very, very common. Also, of course, along with here number 3, sending gifts and any kind of unexpected or unsolicited attention. Often, you know, what they do is out of the blue, they'll send you, you know, a clip of your favorite sort of love song that you had together, or a photo, you know, from when you were on vacation together, and refer to like how wonderful that was back then, and how they can't stop thinking about, you know, what you had, and how sorry they are for losing that. I mean, you know, directly playing into, I mean, it's like drilling the hook into your pain. Okay, so all these fears that we are having, all these inner objections that we're already having, you know, they're drilling right into this. And then, of course, the pretend apologizing and begging, telling you how much they miss you, and that without you, life doesn't make any sense, and your match was made in heaven. And number 5, declaring their love all of a sudden. Here's another variation that is unfortunately very common in the New Age spiritual scene, is the twin soul trap. You know, our love is special. We were meant to be together. We're soulmates. You know, there's the strong energetic tie that people are feeling. And because they don't have enough sophistication, not enough experience to discern what this energetic tie is, they feel it. It's real, but that isn't, because it's, you know, based on love. That is based on manipulation, okay, energetic manipulation. Sending random messages, you know, like thinking of you, I was just dreaming of you. Oh, I just drove by your house. You know, this sort of, especially text messaging, I noticed these days, is being used to get back into your attention. All these hoovering techniques, they serve only one purpose, and that is to get you to think about them. And as you think about them, and this is here where the energetics come in, guys, you are providing energetic narcissistic supply, and they're energetically sensitive, so they can feel this. So you got to be really, really careful. Even I go as far as telling my clients, don't say his or her name, don't think about her, you know, do grace the moment a memory or whatever comes up. You've got to completely cut it off, energetically, physically. Block the contact on your phone, all social media. I will always tell people to shut down all social media accounts. This is serious, guys, because the hoovering is basically pulling you back into your own trauma, into your own pathology, and that is where most of you get stuck. Okay, do all this reminiscing about the past, and trying to engage you through others. Oh, can you give me, your sister's phone number? I wanted to ask her, blah, 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 or talk to others about you and say, oh, how is she doing? I was worried about her. I'm concerned about her. Do you know anything how she's doing? Then number 9, faking the vulnerability or needing your help. The very thing that they've never really showed while you were with them, trying to pull you in that way, or making sexual, relating to the sexual connections, that the connection or sensual connections that you had, and the very thing sort of on a physical, sensualized level that seduces you into your biggest need, into your, drug supply, basically. And saying things like, you're the only one that can make me feel this way, and so forth. Number 11, baiting you with drama. And this is something that can happen during a relationship as well. So all of this can happen during a relationship as well. But this is like, you like all decided, you made your choice, you're like super, super strong, and all of a sudden, there's this huge big drama that doesn't even have anything to do with you, but that kind of is bigger than you. Okay, like oftentimes it's a pretend crisis. Okay, and then they need you, or you have zero time to think about it. It's like you have to react right away. This is like, all the way to stupid stuff like, I lost my key, can you come and bring me the second key, or something like that. You've got to understand this is all carefully planted, this strategically planted and orchestrated. Number 12, pretending to care about you and the children. I see this and have experienced this myself, even with stepchildren, so my children that aren't even his. All of a sudden they're interested in them. They weren't before, but all of a sudden they miss them, and oh my God, and I don't want to lose them, and blah, 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 blah. Number 13, trying to keep themselves in your memory at all times. This is something, especially in conjunction with the energetics guys, when they etherically obsess about you, okay, you will feel this. You will dream of them. You will feel their presence around you. You will feel it in your neck. You'll feel it on your back. You will feel it in your sternum. You will feel stopped energetically, okay? And this can feel very, very crazy making. I mean, people can freak out about this. They can
Jona?
also attack you etherically. This happens quite a lot as well. Yes?
I wasn't going to say anything today, but you have just in so many different ways been able to just help things go through easily. I know other people had asked about how can it just go away?
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these things that you're covering make that gap smaller, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like, I had this question to myself, I'm like, why do I keep picturing, all these kind of coming backs of past things? And to be able to go, oh, okay, well, that helps, not have to think about it. It's almost like it's difficult to put into words right now, but if I have a flashback from the relationship from 15 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
don't have to linger in it. It's just like being able to hear these things just makes it more easy to accept and to clear through much quicker than lingering in it. And
exactly.
even for 1 minute, it's 1 second's a lot faster than 1 minute these days. So it's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Yes, this is why I do this, okay? And this is why I like to dissect this, okay? Because once we see that this is all textbook, okay, it can't be that it's just us, right? This isn't just us, guys. This is everybody, okay? So I like how you said that, closing the gap, okay?
Well, what sunk into me was that it can be very gentle. It doesn't have some of the harshness comes from myself, and also it's taking some of these quote unquote concepts that we hear, like just breathe, and not it like actually just doing it in the moment rather than think,
Yes.
okay, now I have to breathe. It's like you actually breathe, it clears through, and we can move on, and I don't have to, I can function again.
Right, and this is why we condition you guys in this way. Like we practice this with you over and over, create this muscle memory in you, so that when you go into that place where you are challenged energetically, emotionally, physically, that your system automatically does it, and that you remember it. Okay, it's the only way to self-heal is to have that um, uh, present moment awareness and go into the breathing or whatever it is that works for you, that in the course of practicing all this, when it's a safe place, right? Not when in the presence of someone that who challenges you, but when it's safe, when you're just with yourself, when you meditate, or when you're in a transmission. Okay, then it forms new neurological pathways in you. It forms new energetic pathways in you that strengthen you in the moment when you need it. It's like martial arts. That's exactly right, Janet.
Yeah, it is. It's
You
just
you
doing it
form
because,
over and over
right.
again. Exactly. And then in that moment, your system will automatically go there because you've practiced it so many times. Okay.
I did this recently, just very briefly. I had mentioned in my question email thing. I'm like, okay, for some reason I'm drawn to doing this cleanse, blah blah blah, whatever, and I have like so much information. I'm like, I don't even know what to follow. But in that moment of chaos, and it's like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing now, and taking these herbs that dedicate to getting rid of the uncomfortableness I was getting with digestion things. It's essentially parasite cleanse. And like you just said now, my body is going back to remembering, actually
Yes.
feeling the inside of my spine again, actually feeling the muscles in my abdomen where they kind of disappeared. And this has been really, really rough, but it's definitely worth it just to go, okay, I don't want you in me. I'm going to take these things and they make sense, and out you go. And it works.
Yes, this intuition, right, to do like a parasitic cleanse physically that you just described. That's a guidance from within. Okay, that's you wanting to expel something, and I like that you point out the physical aspect, because guys, this is not something you can meditate away. You have to involve your physical, your emotional, your mental, your spiritual, and your energetic part of you. Those are the ones that got fragmented as a result of the trauma, and they need to come back together. They need to come back, and they need to slowly grow back, and you have to follow your inner guidance there. You
Well,
can't
it's
make it
really
go
old
away.
stuff. Like they say, it's really old stuff
Hmm.
that still was lodged in there, and it still is. It's like,
And some
and
of
it's
it is karmic too, Janet. Some of it isn't
yeah,
even the partner just took advantage of it. In your case, that was already there. It was
uh,
already, you were groomed prior to your marriage.
yeah.
So that insight alone, to me, okay, explains so much to me. Because I didn't mention this, but one of the issues I had it too was my pride. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else has this, but I was like, dang, it's everything that I know, and with all the stuff that I can see and everything, why does this keep happening to me? Okay,
Yeah.
because I have blind spots there with myself, and those have been implanted long time ago. Okay, so that's in itself was a huge relief for me to realize that's not because you're too stupid. That's because you have an attachment there. Okay, an etheric attachment, And you know, people are so afraid of possession and evil forces and so forth. If you're asking me, any one of you, what I think is the worst that people come up with is that victimhood. Because victimhood in and of itself prevents you from breaking through whatever it is.
Well, yeah, it comes in like so dark. I'm like, what is this? I thought I got rid of it, and I didn't even have it before. And you know, it makes it confusing. Like it takes it to the mental, and then like these things, these simple concepts, decide it's not a concept right now. I need to save my life. I'm going to take a breath, and your body just naturally starts to do it. Yeah, it goes without a word. It's like this. It is this little implant. You know, like in the Matrix when they get that thing and they pull that thing out of him and they
It's a
throw it
thread.
out the window of the car, and it's like, oh,
That's why we talk about fractals, because it keeps replicating itself into all systems, into all your systems.
yeah,
But you can pull it out like a thread. Okay, you can. But you know, the problem is that the secondary damage. The secondary damage is the fragmentation that we've experienced through questioning ourselves. You know, all these kind of things that happen as part of our trauma. Okay, they need to be undone. Okay, and uh, the process itself starts from within. You know, like really wanting to be whole again, claiming to be whole again, claiming to be sane again. And all of this, guys, leads to learning how to discern truth. Learning how to discern truth. This is what this course is about. Okay? And understanding our part in it. Attachment, yes. Karmic stuff, yes. Etheric manipulation, yes. Sure, all that is taking place. But there's a part in us, okay, that enables it. And that's the part we need to own. Because that part is a part of us. And that means if we want to be whole, we need to allow that part to be part of us as well. We can't single it out and say, yeah, you know, I'm the spiritual person, but, well, my guilt, but that's not mine, you know, or my judgment or whatever. So, yes, you can tell, I mean, we can talk about this forever, okay, because it always revolves around the same core issue, and that is that we're not present in ourselves. Whatever has led to us not being able to be present in ourselves is irrelevant when it comes to the healing and when it comes to stepping out. We need to recognize it, and then most likely with the help of other people, even if it's just really short, you know, 1 hour or whatever, one talk, one, you know, meeting or whatever can help us to make that one step. And then all the other things come in. There's a lot of stuff to expect when we discard. Obviously, you just see things here that are red. Those are the most typical discard mistakes. And Janet, I happen to know this about you too. Smear campaigns. You know, it's horrific. You know, the lies and the allegations and the length at which narcissists will go to prove that it was all you. Okay, including terrible, terrible things like pulling the kids in, because guess what? The kids are objects too. Never is about the kids. It never is about love. There is no love. This is about grooming the next generation of narcissistic supply. So I want to move on here a
that
little
was
bit.
no, that was just so quickly. That
Yeah.
was part of when I left. I saw it start happening in the family. It was like this. I don't know what to set myself up, but all I can do is this energy of Princess Diana and watching me have children and watching a family want to take them away from me, essentially, and control my kids. it was weird. It's weird.
No,
It
it's devastating because you feel like such a victim, and the legal system is not very well prepared to deal with narcissists, which is why, by the way, we have a sixth part here in 2 weeks, dealing with narcissists in court. But I'm going to have to speed up here a little bit and get through what it's like, what we can do, because there are some things we can do. Okay, so obviously, there's some situations like, at work, or when your parent is a narcissist, where you can't leave. Okay, so you have to learn to live with this, and the rules are really always the same. The first, in general, is to not give them any reaction. That is their supply. Okay, so in narc language, we call this gray rock. Okay, that is to be basically like someone who is numb. Okay, but it's more like a pretense. It's like a protection that you have to pretend, that you have to fake. Okay, to no longer being interesting for the other. So the concept here in really getting rid of a narcissist in your life, and letting you, so that they let you be, is to no longer supply them with that which they get from you. That's really how simple that is. Now, of course, when it's parents and so forth, this is all, again, here carefully implanted and groomed and primed and all that. So it's not that easy, to see through all these techniques, but that's why we go through them, so that you can recognize them, where you just simply say, okay. You don't go against it. You don't go into the old patterns. I mean, when it's with parents, it's so obvious, and with siblings too. Within a split second, a conversation can turn into this conversation that you had 40 years ago. Okay, and all of a sudden the siblings act like kindergartners, and that this is like all really, really, really old patterns that play there. And so you got to have that resolve, not wanting to support this anymore. Okay, so gray rock means you cutting yourself off from that inner reaction that you have. So this is a bit psychologically dissociating. Okay, which most of us are really, really good at, and too good, pathologically good at dissociating, but not in order to avoid to feel it, but in order to avoid giving the other what makes them continue to pound at us, if that makes any sense. Okay, so you have to remove that which feeds them. Okay, and the best ways to do this is like, and this is my approach, just do something different. Okay, don't do the same thing you'd always do. Catch yourself in reenacting your own patterns. Okay, let them have the last word. You need a little bit of emotional discipline for that. Because once your walls are down, guys, they will push right in there. They'll take the whole hand when you give the small finger. Don't try to convince, don't try to defend, don't try to plead, don't try to bargain, don't try to justify. No explaining, nothing. Okay, you're right. This puts you into a place where you can feel more calm about yourself. All right, and when you can be more calm within yourself, then you don't react according to these patterns anymore, bit by bit, obviously. All this has to do with boundary work, because you need to work on that. This is like your homework part. You need to, again here, this is when you have to live with a narcissist. Okay, not live in the same home, but when you can't eradicate them out of your life, you exist, you coexist, but you don't feed any of this. You have to learn how to set more proper boundaries. And this leads to the second main strategy that you can apply, namely no more broadcasting. that you are a victim, that you are in pain. You have to cut that off from the narcissist. Because a lot of narcissists also have a sort of slightly sadistic kind of tendencies, which means that they live off this is their supplies, their drug. When they see you wallowing, when they see you in pain, you know, keep your communication positive, you know, don't give them any negative emotion, any negative emotion. This is when most of you guys let yourself get pulled in. You need to refocus your attention to positive attitude, positive actions, positive thoughts and feelings, so that you can grow, so that you can get out of that victim place, out of that survivor place, even into the thriver place. This is the worst thing that can happen for a narcissist, is to see you grow, okay? And they'll immediately drop you. I mean, maybe they'll try to, you know, disgrace you or, you know, embarrass you or whatever. You know, this is what we call a smear campaign, you know, they start bad-mouthing you. But when they start bad-mouthing you, you know, then you've won, you know, because then they're not pushing in. They're just, you know, sort of trying to retaliate, you know, like Becky, like you said. And this is a very common form of retaliation, smear campaign. Then number 3, and this is the most important thing in my experience as an energy healer, reconnect with healthy friends, with healthy families, with sane people. Okay, sane and healthy relationships or social relationships are the foundation for sane romantic relationships. So, you know, don't hang, you know, like part of the breakup cycle is often that a lot of people will leave us too. So it's part of the discarding. I told you, you have to like really let go of all the friends that you had and everything that you know, you and your husband or whatever, because the chances are that they've been, you know, manipulated over years. So most of them are not going to be of any support. For most of them, you may have already been isolated or whatever. But, you know, don't isolate yourself. You know, that is so important. So even if it is going to take a photography class or a yoga class, or, you know, form new relationships, sane relationships, where there is no push-pull, okay? The more you can connect with others, the more your inner connection process is supported. And then you can move to your 4th step of that, which is showing self-love, caring for yourself again. Really, really loving yourself, okay? And don't, you know, fall for all these traps, these hoovering traps, you know, with blame shifting. And, you know, just be gray rock. Just say, thank you for letting me know. I see, I hear you. Oh, okay. That's I can tell that this is what it feels like from your point of view. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, whatever it is that they're saying to you, you just sort of nonchalantly block it. Okay, that's all you need to do, especially, I'd say, the first year. You need to have a strategy, and that strategy needs to imply how to react. Just remember gray rock, okay? Now, when it comes to court later, we'll see that gray rock also needs to imply basically covering your ass, you know, legally. Okay, so that's another dimension of that. But it's important for you to understand that if you have to live with a narcissist for whatever reason, okay, so it could be because you're co-parents, or because you still live with them, or because they're your parents or siblings or whatever, just don't give them any supply. Just stop giving them what they're getting from you, okay? Do your boundary work, homework, And then what do you do with a narcissistic co-parent? We've talked a little bit about this already, you know, what that can look like. They can try to take the kids away from you. They can try to make you look like an unfit parent. They can starve you, like take all the money away, take your home away. I mean, there's people here amongst us whom this has happened to. Okay, this is not just some theoretical thing. This happens. It's really, really hard to not see yourself as a victim because it's so unfair. Okay, it is. And there is nothing that can justify that. And that's why you need a strategy beforehand. Okay, when it comes to money, when it comes to home and so forth, what Amanda shared with us, you need to have a little bit of a plan, because if not, they can pull the rug from underneath you, and they will. Okay. Now, when it comes to co-parenting, there are very, very simple guidelines with a narcissist. No matter what your arrangement is, what your court order is, 50-50, or you have the physical custody, or they do, or the visitation, it's going to be a drag. It's going to be a drag until your kid's old enough to say they, you know, whom they want to be with, whom they don't want to be with. It's a disaster. Okay. Do not expect anything different than that. It will never be harmonious. Any co-parent with a narcissist who hopes that one day it will get better is delusional. It will not. Okay. So why am I saying this? Because you need to understand that your ex, the co-parent that you're supposed to you know, like raise your children with, okay, that it's not actually a co-parent. It's a counter-parent. Okay, it's a counter-parent. And there are also elements, you know, that have to do with them trying to pull the kids in, okay, putting a wedge between you and the kids, all right? And then there's the karmic aspects, and then there's your guilt, and then there's all this convoluted. It's a convoluted dance of guilt and shame, okay? They will play on your false sense of security. They will not cooperate with you. They will make sure that they set the pace. You know, they'll constantly ask for changes. They'll try to regulate your emotions this way, and it will be repeating. You will feel like it's Groundhog Day. It's like over and over and over. They keep fighting you, and they will threaten you and intimidate you, and they will make allegations, and they will try to wear you down. That's just the reality of it, guys. You can't change the experience, but you can change how you handle the experience, okay? Their objective is to trying to control your emotion, because they're entitled to, you know, you sort of working towards them, you doing all the dirty work, and them sort of reaping all the glamour, you know. They see their kids as an extension of themselves, you know, and obviously therefore take a lot of pride in it, but they're not necessarily interested in doing the day-to-day work. This is one of your assets. You know, when you work with me, I can go a little deeper there. There are certain predictabilities when you work with a narcissist, how you can get them, okay? But their main thing is to get you to react, okay? So they will continue, even if they have no romantic interest in you. It's not about that. It's just about regulating, controlling you emotionally. So they'll try to trigger your reactivity, and they'll play into your fears. They'll, you know, into your fear of confrontation, especially, which most of you have. They will misuse your sense of fairness, your sense of justice. You believe in the good in people. They'll misuse all of these things. Okay? They will constantly try to change the rules, because from their narcissistic point of view, They're in charge and everybody else is subhuman. Okay, so what can you do? Definitely counseling or coaching, that is, you and the kids, very, very important to give you, psychological and emotional backup. Okay, minimize contact as much as you can with the narcissist. Always cover your ass, write everything down, record everything, save every receipt, write down meticulously every interaction, have a calendar where everything gets recorded, when the exchange was with the kids and so forth, what was discussed and so forth. Continue gray rock, and involve yourself in your kids' life as much as you can, but simultaneously remove the supply. Work on yourself, work on your victimization, on your triggers. That's the self-healing aspect. Work on, calming your emotion, meditation, being in your center, grounding, centering techniques, and be proactive. Be proactive for the kids. Okay. I'll get to what never to do. Okay. The don'ts, but be proactive means, see all this coming. Don't react like a fire put outer, and don't be surprised. Okay, you have to start being or having the upper hand. Okay, you have to go into that strategic place. You literally have to think like the narcissist so that you can beat them in their game. Treat them as if they don't exist. That is the worst thing that you can do to a narcissist. That ignorance, that, like not even looking at them, not even, completely ignoring them unless you have to for legal reasons, will get them lose interest in you very, very quickly. And the kids too, that's another thing. But here is the list of don't do's, and this is really, 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 really important for those of you who are co-parenting kids with a narcissist. Never, never let the child be in the middle. Don't triangulate with the child. Don't say things like, ask your dad or ask your mom. Don't. Never, ever, ever badmouth your children. Okay, so court-ordered psychologists that do like the psych eval for the judge, that's the first thing they look at, is one of the parents bad-mouthing the other parent. Okay? Don't forget, these children are children of the other parent as well. And when you attack the other parent, especially when you start using words like narcissist, forget it. If the court hears the kids use those words, you have landed, sort of one of the worst strikes that you can have in family court. But the point that I was trying to make is when you badmouth the other person, when you degrade or when you, minimize or judge the other parent, don't forget that you are also judging the child, because the other parent is a part of them. It's very important to understand. So when you judge the other parent, you also attacking the child's sense of self, and that's, as a mother or father, as an empath, you don't want that. Okay. Number 3, never accept reciprocal behavior. They're not fair. They won't ever be. You going the extra mile is enabling. Don't do it ever. Okay. Don't try to impress your child. Don't try to convince your child that you're the better parent. They already got all this. It doesn't matter how old they are. Energetically, they're fully informed, and they have to figure this out their own way. That's part of their karmic task. Number 5, don't try to reason with the narcissist. There is no reason. They're entitled. They're grandiose. It's not rational. Okay. My personal suggestion is, if you can afford it, to only converse either through your lawyer or a third-party site. So there are websites that facilitate a parent communication where it's not through email or text, where it's decentralized, so that the judge and the social worker and whoever is involved in, if there's a litigation going on or whatever, have a full log of your guys' communication. Don't try to explain to your kids these mechanisms, okay? They do not need that. They need your love. They need your empathy, and that is your strength. Okay, that's your power. Remember, when you feel that things get escalated, okay, then let it be. Let it be. You don't have to compensate. You don't have to make peace. This is not important. It's okay to let things go down the drainer. Okay, just don't add to it. Another thing really important, this comes with staying in the present moment awareness. Don't respond right away. This whole texting thing in nowadays, and emailing and so forth, don't ever respond without sort of giving it enough space and enough heart connection before you write anything that you send. Write something and then save it as a draft, and then go back to it after an hour or so, take a walk, center yourself, read it again, correct it, and then send it out. This is also something, with this texting. Narcissists love texting because it's this instantaneous response. So you really have to discipline yourself to not respond right away, because that, makes them lose interest. There's no juice there. Okay. Pick your fights wisely in that way, and don't get involved in all these side battles. They'll try to drag you into all kinds of dramas. Okay. Don't engage in these pointless fights. In fact, don't engage in any fights, because you can't win. Don't fight. Just don't participate. Walk out. You're already divorced. The things that didn't go well while you're married, why should they go better when you're divorced? They won't, and they don't have to, because you're not living together anymore. Never, never, never defend yourself in front of a narcissist as a co-parent, or defend the child or anything like that. And don't ever deviate from anything that was court ordered or that was preset by a sort of a higher authority. Okay, because that's your power. Your power is that you are sane in that way, and then you can see what is needed. They will continue to be a narcissist. They will continue to show their pathology. Okay, that's why your strength is truth and your ability to be in your heart, so that you can then, with your children, enter this recovery and this rebuilding of your life. And as a mother, as a sister, as all these different ways, guys, going through this recovery and healing process with your children together, it also teaches them wonderful things. So don't be afraid of that. Okay, this is the most important journey in your life. Okay, you're rediscovering yourself. You are connecting with your true self. You become emotionally resilient. You learn how to execute better boundaries. You learn how to claim your own power back. That is the most important journey of your life. So take this as a beginning of a new life, and rebuild this life. Rebuild your own family. Okay? Rebuild your own relationship with yourself and your children. And most and foremost, guys, those are my closing words here. You've got to move on. I've told you this before. There is no closure with the narcissist. There will never be a closure. Your closure is that you chose yourself, that you are now in this thriver mode. And that is what you have learned from this, or what you've gotten out of this learning experience. What has enabled you to embark on this most important journey of all, namely to your own true self and becoming true to yourself, being able to recognize truth and having the courage to implement it. Thank you, guys. We have one more left, and that is specifically for dealing with an empath, with a narcissist in court. If you are not in any of such situations or circumstances, you can skip that one. But there's a lot to learn when you look at it through the lens of the court system, and what to expect here. Whether it goes as far as litigation is not really important, but the techniques that play a role in court, they are the same that we've already talked about, just in a slightly different way. Okay. Congratulations to all of you listening here, to all of you survivors and thrivers. This is, really important work, like Janet said, to close the gap that fragments you, the gap that traumatizes you. Whoever installed it in you in the first place is irrelevant, guys. What matters is that you take that moment that you get prompted to reconnect with yourself and to rebuild the relationship with yourself as your cue. That is yours to claim, regardless of how you got here. Most of us got here through trauma. That's fine. Because the alternative is to continue living in collective delusion. So I hope this was motivating for you. Thank you all for your attention and for your love and for these wonderful sharings. Have a wonderful week, and share if you want to in the Sacred Self-Healing Forum where I post the recordings. Please share. Please leave comments for others. Please, there are so many people, guys, that go there in the middle of the night when they're in complete desperation and watch those Sacred Self-Healing workshops because they're looking for that support. Even if it's just a song, I will survive. And then post a YouTube link there. It doesn't matter. Okay. You're a survivor, you're a thriver, and that means that you're also an inspirer. And that will help you to strengthen that part in you. Help others.